Hi everyone, this is Jen. I am the founder of Life After Busy, and I'm a productivity coach that helps female creatives and entrepreneurs achieve more by doing less through personalized productivity. And today we're going to talk to you about how to focus with lots of interruptions. So say you only have 40 seconds. Yes, 40 seconds. How much do you think you're going to be able to achieve in that time? Well, 40 seconds is the time that well-known author in the productivity and time management space, Chris Bailey, says that you have in his TED Talk about focus. Yes, only 40 seconds. And this time he came up with is if you work with a phone next to you, because we're constantly getting those notifications and bings and dings and whistles from our smartphones. Well, if you're a mompreneur, you are battling with more than just that phone. You likely have a husband who is asking you to run some errands, maybe a friend who's trying to call you to unload her dispute last night with her mom, and those lovely kids that we love so much that are constantly interrupting. Well, each time you fall victim to those interruptions, there's something called a switching cost. And what that is when we take our focus off of our task and move it to, a device that's interrupting us, or a human, or even if it's an internal interruption, our mind takes some time to refocus when we go back to the original task. The time on that varies depending on what particular study you're looking at, but it's definitely a time loss. And it's also an energy loss, because if you're constantly getting interrupted, every 40 seconds, you're going to feel really drained by the time you get to the end of that task, because you're continuing to pull yourself back and pull yourself back and pull yourself back. So we want to get you more time in flow where you're deeply focused on the task at hand. And I used to struggle with all of this as well. So I want to share with you guys some tips and tricks and tools that I have found that help me focus despite all of those interruptions. But first, let's talk about the different types of interruptions. I kind of hinted to this a little bit. First, there's some that are helpful, right? If we're working on a task and we have a client call coming up and our phone notifies us that, we need to get on the call in 10 minutes, that's a helpful interruption. That gives us the time we need to kind of transition from one task to the next. But some are harmful. Some just really aren't necessary. And maybe it's, you have the Instagram notifications turned on and you're constantly getting those notifications every time, any of the 1,000 people you follow post on Instagram. That's not so helpful and probably really distracting. Then also the three categories of interruptions are people, internal interruptions, so thoughts that bubble up in your mind, and then technology. And I want to start off talking about technology. There's two things, two tools that I love to teach about. And the first is what I call a website blocker. And I use one called Cold Turkey, and I can put a link for it right here. But what it is say you want to go and you need to write a blog post, or you need to write an email that's going to take a lot of attention and focus. When you turn on your computer, so this is for computers, for laptops, for desktop computers, you turn on a website blocker and it will only allow you to be in that one program. You don't have the ability to go in and cruise the internet and jump on social media. You actually have to turn your device off and turn it back on again to disable the website blocker for whatever time period you set for. So that is number one. Website blockers are excellent. And then number two is a feature that's fairly new, and this is for the Apple iPhone, and it's the new focus feature. And I'll go through it with you here. If you tap at the top of your phone and scroll down with your finger, you'll find the control center. Focus lives where Do Not Disturb used to live, and it comes with some presets. So the presets are work, sleep, personal, and driving. If you notice, I think it was automatically set to turn on driving when you get in the car for safety reasons. And there's also a little plus at the bottom of that screen to allow you to customize your own focus settings. So say you're a gardener and you want to really kind of get in flow when you're out gardening, but there's a couple of apps that you want to be able to access or you want to get notifications from while you're in the garden. You can set that up. You can truly do it for anything. So you press the little three dots that you'll see in the options to set the period of time, or you can even set it based on location. So say you want to set it for 60 minutes, you can. Or if you want to set it for when you're at your office, you can do that as well. And finally, you can customize the contacts and the apps, like I mentioned, that are able to break through that particular focus that you've created. So let me give you an example. I have a work focus set up from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. every weekday, Monday through Friday, because that is when I get my most focused work done, my most deep work done. But I don't want my family to not be able to reach me. So my husband, my kids, and their schools can break that focus. So those notifications and text messages, phone calls will come through. Anything from those contacts will come through. And the great thing that the thing I love the most about this feature is the magic of that time setting. So from 9 to 10:30 a.m., I said my phone will automatically go into focus. I don't even have to touch my phone for it to trigger that focus to turn on. How many times have you picked up your phone maybe to turn it on Do Not Disturb or to silence notifications, and you see something that have popped up on your screen and you get lost in it? You don't even have to worry about that particular interruption or distraction. Okay, so those are my two favorite features for tech. Oh, one more thing about the focus. I have an Apple iWatch that I wear all of the time. You can enable any of these focuses at any time. Like I said, you can have preset times, but if I say, hey, I want to do a work set, from 4 to 5 p.m. because my kids are off doing their sports, I can actually just turn it on right here from my Apple Watch and I don't have to have my phone near me. So that is an excellent feature for that as well. Okay, so those are my top 2 for tech to silence notifications and distractions. And again, with tech, you can go super old school and you can just take your phone and put it in another room. That works too, if you're not super techie and you want to avoid that altogether. But now I want to move into the human factor. So devices are fairly easy to silence, but humans are a little bit more challenging. And here's my top tip, is really be preemptive during a time where you need to focus. So whether that is working from home and you need to communicate with your family, or say you're working in an office and you need to communicate to your office mates that it's time for you to work. Of course, kids are a little bit different depending on their age. A teenager is going to respond a lot differently. Mostly they want to be left alone anyways, than versus a toddler. So you have to keep that in mind. But here's what that would look like if you are a mompreneur, a work from home mompreneur. So here we go. Hey kids, I need to get some work done. It's going to take me about 30 minutes. And then after that, I am free to answer questions or even play with you for a little bit. That's it. Just communicate your needs to them. And you can even take this a step further and do a family meeting where you're discussing, this is what my week looked like, maybe with your husband or your older children. And so they understand preemptively what you have going on that week, and they can give you the focus and avoid the interruptions. Your odds are definitely better if you close your door. If you have to work in an open space, you can even hang like a little sign on the back of your chair that says do not disturb, or put on those big noise canceling headphones. Say if you're in a traditional office space and you want to signal to your coworkers that you can't be disturbed right now. You don't even have to have anything going, just the sign that you have those big headphones on hopefully will signal to them that you want to be left alone. Okay, so that's the preemptive measure. So let's say someone's just gone and interrupted you anyway. So how do we react in that moment and get back to focus? So couple things. First is if you're in a deep flow, you're in deep focus, just pause for a minute and take a moment to write down where you're at, whether that be in a traditional notebook or maybe it's in a digital task manager. And just that act might be enough to signal to the person who's interrupted you that you were in a focus session and you didn't want to be interrupted. But if that's not enough, just expect the interruption and say, hey, I can't talk right now. I'm going to be done in like 15 minutes, like I promised, and I'll come back and talk to you. If it's not an emergency, obviously, right? And then a final little note here is pay attention to the timing of your work. So say you have a young toddler at home and but they go to preschool for a few hours in the morning. Plan your focus work during that time where they're in preschool, and then maybe you can do like a less taxing administrative task like checking email or posting on social media, engaging on social media can be done during a time where your toddler is just playing in the room next to you. That's also super important. Okay, and then finally, I want to talk about internal distractions. So these, in my opinion, are the most challenging. These are, say you're writing that blog post and you have an idea that pops up in your head. I need to make sure, oh my gosh, I forgot to call the optometrist and order my daughter's contacts. She's almost out, right? That's that thought. Rather than following the thought and making the phone call, have a place where you can park that idea. I like to use my Daytimer. I use the Full Focus Planner. I can put a link for you for that here, and I'll just jot that note down. I also have a routine, the reset routine, which I will link to here, what I do at the end of each day where I circle back to all of that. So it's all funneling to that. But just have a place where you can park your idea. But what if you're out running around and you have that internal thought come up? This is where I like to use my phone again. And I love to use Siri, and I'll just say, hey Siri, remind me to put that package in the car when I get home. And it's location specific. So that works really well for me also. Okay, so we've covered the devices, we've covered the human factor, and we've also covered internal distractions. Make sure you check out the reset routine so you can funnel all of those interruptions into one routine that you can rely on day after day, and your brain won't just keep following the rabbit hole of the interruption itself. Finally, let's talk about the fact that what if you are so distracted? We live in a world where attention is a very high commodity, and we're constantly interrupted, and you feel just like your focus is so fractured. This is where a lot of people like to do the digital detox, where they just disconnect from all devices for a period of time. whether that be like a family meal, whether that be an entire day, whether that be an entire weekend or a whole week, just to sort of give you that reset. But eventually we have to come back, right? We have to re-enter the digital world. So I would love to just plant the seed in your brain on how we can make changes systemically to the systems of all the interruptions. The example I found actually in France a couple of years ago, they outlawed employers messaging their employees on Sundays. They'd actually get fines if they send communications on Sundays. So think of something on a greater scale. Whether that's, changing your settings on your social media, but how can we as a community work to systemically take back our attention and take back our focus, because it's so, so, so important. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much. I'll be back here again next week, and make it a great day.